I despise playing heavy tanks for the most part, but this vehicle changed my mind about one thing, and that is the dominance that you can have in certain scenarios about pushing in and really giving it a go. And this tank probably does it quite well, and that's because it has a hybrid between having the high alpha damage, 560, and also having a decent amount of damage per minute to be able to at least deal damage consistently rather than having to wait a really long time to really have an impact, as well as the fact that it isn't the slowest of all of the super heavies in quotation marks, things like the Type 5, the Type 4, the Maus, the E100, blah blah blah. But there are a few problems with the Panzer 7, and this is the tier 10 German heavy tank from the tech tree that is of course got a similar variant, the VKK, which is the premium version of this vehicle as well. So it isn't really I mean, I've had an amazing game in it. I think I had a game where I dealt 8,600 damage, and of course my video file corrupted. I've got a screenshot that I can probably put in at the end of this video as to back it up, my claim, but of course halfway through the video footage stopped, and yeah, it was just a singular screenshot type image halfway through. So I mean, it's unusable, unfortunately, which would have been a brilliant feature as to this, because it literally showcased everything about the tank, the aggressive nature, when you can push, and stuff like that. But there's no point in talking about it. It was triggering enough as it is, even after having had the result that we did in this tank. But we've got two really good replays either way, and hopefully that will showcase the VK or the Panzer 7, and similarly the premium version. I don't own the premium version, so that kind of sucks, but it doesn't matter a whole lot since it's not really about that. It's about this playstyle and how you can use these super heavies to still have good results. Now, myself, I'm going to open it up. I'm not the best super heavy tank player. I don't particularly enjoy playing them. I find them very slow. I find them hard to impact the game really, especially due to their speed, which means you have to be very good at positioning yourself on the map, and it doesn't really offer much flexibility, which is not something I really like in the game. I feel like flexible tanks are always the best ones, but either way you can still have really nice games, and that's what World of Tanks is about. It's not always about playing the most meta thing that you can see, and I see why people do enjoy playing the Panzer 7 and why this German super heavy is quite liked. It is of course primarily focused around being able to side scrape, yet it's not the best side scraper because of the fact that you do get big weak points on the side of the vehicle. Unfortunately, not able to actually showcase exactly where I mean, but essentially underneath the turret you have these big bulbous areas on the left and right of the vehicle when you're looking at it, kind of the turret ring, so to say, and essentially that is a big weak point. You see it on tanks like the FV4 or 215B, and I'm not talking about the tank destroyer, the actual heavy tank. They have these big bulbous areas that can be a pain in the backside to be able to really kind of side scrape with. It's always a feature for some reason that these side scraping tanks always have horrible side weak points that everyone pens, so yeah, it kind of defeats the purpose. But of course skilled players will literally pepper this thing with rounds. You really don't have any armor, which kind of sucks, because the whole point is that you're supposed to side scrape, but you can't if anyone knows what they're doing against it. So just be aware if you're grinding towards this thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to be able to side scrape so well with this thing. Yeah, no, it's just not the case. You'd actually be better off trying to really over-angle the front of your vehicle and try and pen or try and make them bounce that way than you would be to actually try and side scrape against the player that knows what they're doing. But what I always like to see about the Panzer 7 is that you can get up close and personal, and we see that in a second. Of course, trying to take out some of the more broken vehicles, things like the Centurion AVRE, which is always a fun one to come up against, because you know, we all love what that vehicle can do. But of course that's what's sat in front of us. We've penned him once, and of course we've dealt 4,000 damage, which is nice, decent game for sure. And of course at this point it's just a case of mopping up the enemy team. The standard B with the googly eyes obviously gets sent back into the garage. At this point I think yeah, I'm well within my rights to just YOLO. I mean, I've got so much hit points anyway. You're seeing me look for that lower, or the upper plate weak point of the Centurion, which is essentially that big upper plate where the mesh or the kind of little rail bars are actually kind of at, and that means that you can actually pen the AVRE when facing it rather than trying to kind of get lucky and pen that lower plate, because it's quite small. I mean, you can pen it, granted, if you're close enough, but if you're looking down on the tank, it's basically impossible to actually hit, and you'll probably bounce anyway. But either way, a good result in the Panzer 7, showcasing, you know, what you can do when the enemy team decide not to go the best place on Westfield, and there you go. 5,608 damage with a little bit of assist as well, and really good tank in my opinion. I actually quite enjoy playing this tank. Now, it's not the be all and end all playing on Westfield, where you can kind of just ruffle stomp your way through opponents that obviously haven't gone the right way and get some easy shells of damage. Sometimes you do have to duke it out with people, and I guess what we'll see in this one is us actually taking damage, which you didn't really see in the previous one other than the AVRE, of course, just, you know, firing anywhere on the tank and basically hitting you for 400, but, you know, it is what it is, on one of the most super heavy tanks in the game, supposedly. And of course, there we go, the first shell of damage much earlier on than in the previous game, and that's of course a 140 just YOLOing around into the side of us and penning, because, you know, super heavy and all of that. Either way, we're pushing into the central section. You probably don't want to come here if you are quite slow. I mean, maybe it was a misplay by me. In fact, it probably was. So I'm not going to coat it up and say, you know, that was a lucky shell with the 140. I could have probably expected to at least take one hit there, if not more. But at this point, I'm just deciding, you know what, screw sitting around at the back. I'm in this big boy. I'm going to go forward. I mean, I wasn't playing in particularly the most kind of precious way, trying to savour every last hit point on my vehicle. I kind of find it boring if you play super heavies like that. You definitely don't want to be camping in them. I mean, what's the point? It's not very fun, and of course it is maybe the better way to play if you just want pure damage, but you're going to impact the team's potential to actually win the game, so are you really winning anyway? But either way, we push forward. It's time to get some damage, and the E100 looks like a good starter target. And what we'll see here is actually some fighting with some other tier 10 heavies, and not just super heavies. We've got the IS-4, we've got the Sturm Tiger, which is the TD that has quite a bit of frontal armour if you don't have premium rounds, of course. And of course the Waffle Panzer 4, who is an easy farm, and we won't take any notice in anyone else if we see that guy around, since we're going to easily be able to pump him. But you see me side scraping here. I mean, it's kind of difficult. Once again, it's one of those things where you kind of just have to hit and hope that someone isn't going to be able to pen you or know where to pen you. Sometimes it's actually worth like angling your tank outwards so that it kind of confuses people. They think, why the hell have they got the lower plate out on display when you should be side scraping? It's kind of like the mirrored side scrape, if that makes sense, just exposing the hull of your vehicle. It can confuse people. It can potentially bounce around, and you can see me here trying to get some damage on this IS-4, but we go for the Sturm Tiger first, since I don't want to get penned by that thing, which would be devastating, especially to the hit points. And you know, with a German tank, you also risk the possibility of getting set on fire. But instead of going for the IS-4, the harder target, I am of course preying on the weak, the E100 side, and of course we're never going to pass that one up. 1400 damage so far, and we're just going to pull around that corner, hope we can bounce around from the IS-4. You can see when we pull around a corner like this, we actually hide all of the weak points of the tank, and they really have to have just super high penetration to go through the actual tank itself. And since I'm a big super heavy, I decide, you know what, I'm going to turn the IS-4 outside on for everyone so they can easily remove him, and then we can deal with the rest of the tanks who may or may not decide to get in the cap. So, always a tip you can do, if you can help out your team, sometimes it is actually worth it, unless you're of course going for your third mark and you want the damage yourself, at which point maybe you'd be toxic and try and avoid actually helping your team out. But we're not like that. We're actually going to try and do it, and we're all about trying to get that win. There's no point in kind of getting that extra damage if it means we end up losing. So decide it's time to go towards the cap circle. We do of course have this medium tank who's pushed in, probably wrongly, I guess. Action X pens us on the move, which is always good. Both him and me being on the move, and then he decides to quake in his boots, trying to run away. But no, you don't run away from the Panzer 7. You can only run to your demise, and it looks like he may even get taken out in a minute by us. You'll have to wait and see. Now, we've done 3,300 damage, which is more hit points than this vehicle has, so, you know, it's a positive. We go for the shot on the 140, which is quite easy. Get a little bit of extra damage, and he's going to be finding it a little bit difficult to pen us reliably. You can see him bouncing off of us, but we actually missed the shell on the 140, which means we open ourselves up for him to be able to get another shot on us. You can see me just making it difficult, making it annoying for him to pen us, or at least use some level of his brain capacity to try and hit us, and he doesn't actually manage to pen anyway, so great result there. Of course, just flicking ourselves side to side, just making it weird for the opponent, and that's really what the Panzer 7 can do and how you can use the armour. You don't really want to be sat still using this tank, since people will pinpoint those weak points quite easily and go for them. And of course, especially when we're trying to get back to the cap, I don't want to be spending any wasted time just taking unnecessary damage or anything like that. But we go for the Super Conqueror. I pretty much knew he wasn't in the cap, but we're not going to be able to spot whoever is in the cap yet, so it's just time to push. We do have the medium tank and of course a tank destroyer. I didn't look at this moment in time as to what either of them were. Probably a bad misplay by me, but either way, we're going towards the Progetto. We go for the shell on the move, only tracking him because of course you would only track him. But either way, we still end up with the assistance, which is why you should always go for both assistance and damage at the same time, because you never know, you may end up not actually penning them, and sometimes you'll just get the assistance damage as well. Whether if you went for just the damaging shell, you wouldn't have got anything if you didn't manage to pen. But you know, pushing forward, this tank, very nice. You can always feel confident in the later stages of when you're playing in this tank, since you do have the hit points to outtrade a lot of people in the later game. But 4,750 damage, not an awful result. We got a little bit of assistance as well, which helped out. And of course, 4 enemies taken out as well. 1,559 base experience is an okay game. But yeah, unfortunately we weren't able to actually showcase the 8,600 damage game, which I would have loved to do, but that was somehow a mastery badge. So yeah, there you go. There's the mastery one, even if it isn't the one I wanted to showcase. If you did enjoy the video, please do subscribe to the channel, as we're nearly at 15,000, which is crazy. And of course, like the video if you did, and I hope you'll join me in the next video coming soon. Goodbye.